Good morning.
Good morning.
You can, if you wish, you can come nearer. Very few people are there. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. The subject of my today's talk is Sita, the silent power. We shall be celebrating the birthday of Rama, the great incarnation of Hinduism, on next Sunday, that is 10th of this month. And in the morning we shall celebrate that. And we usually do not celebrate the birthday of Sita, wife of Sri Rama, Ramachandra, because her birthday is not known. That is the difficulty. But there is some accepted birthday of her, not about her exactly, after a month of the birth date of Rama. That is called Sita Navami. That comes just after 1 month of Rama's birthday. But whatever it may be, we always remember Rama, incarnation of God. But along with Rama, Sita is also very important. She was the wife, divine consort of Rama. So the story is like this. In Ramayana we read, which Ramayana is the great epic written by Valmiki, the great sage. And it is the life story of Rama along with his other brothers and divine consort, and also the war with Ravana. The story is like this, that in Ayodhya there was a kingdom and our capital was Ayodhya. It is a very important place, and very recently they are building a very big temple there, on the Rama's birthplace. So he was born of Dasharatha, his father was Dasharatha. It so happened that in those days kings used to have several wives because there was not much population, so polygamy was, if you call it polygamy, so that was acceptable in the society. So he had 3 wives, but unfortunately he did not have any son or daughter born. So he performed a special yagna, spiritual service, fire service, and after that the 4 sons were born: Ram, Lakshman, Bharat and Shatrughna. And Rama was the eldest, and he was unique. That means in every respect he was unique from the very young age. So when Dasharatha became old, he thought that Rama will be the successor. So he declared that Rama will be the successor. But at that time, amongst the 3 wives, the second wife's son was Bharata. So the second wife proposed, under some ill advice of her counselor, proposed that, well, instead of Rama, let Bharata be the king. And the issue was this, that once Kaikeyi served Dasharatha, the king Dasharatha, very sincerely when Dasharatha was really very ill. And at that time Dasharatha was very pleased and told Kaikeyi that, I shall give you 2 boons. And Kaikeyi said that, yes, sir, I shall ask for the boons when time comes. And she actually, at this moment, when Dasharatha declared that Rama will be the next king, so she came and said that, you had given me 2 boons that I did not really ask at the time when you have proposed. Now I ask that my son Bharat will be the king and Rama will go into the forest for 13 years. So that was the condition. So Rama was crestfallen, Dasharatha was crestfallen. He could not imagine that this type of request will come from his wife, but he was a king and just king, truthful, so he had to accept that. And he became ill, and at that time Rama was not there, so he was visiting some relative's place. So when he heard and found that Dasharatha has fallen ill and he was in a dilemma what to do, so he said that, definitely I shall follow what was committed by my father. So I shall go into the forest, let Bharata be the king, and in that way things were decided. And Rama went to the forest. And in the meantime, it was when Rama went to the forest, he was about 17 or 18 years old. And before that, they had actually married. That means Rama married earlier Sita, who was the princess of a king. His name was Janaka, and his capital was Mithila. And Sita's birth was very interesting, and she was found in a farmland. Janaka, in those days, kings used to plow their own field, and one day the King Janaka found her lying on the field, and she picked up that young child. Child means just a newborn baby. So he brought that baby and nursed, and ultimately she became a very beautiful girl. And because she was adopted, then time for marriage came, and Janaka, many princes actually wanted to marry her, but Janaka made a condition. He had a big bow, and it was very heavy, and it was a gift from Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva was pleased and give him this bow, and nobody could string that. That means what we say about stringing that. Many people could not lift that also. It was so heavy and very strong. So he made a condition for this marriage of his daughter, that if anybody can string this bow, then I shall give my daughter in marriage to that person. So many princes came, all fell, and Rama also heard from his priest that Vasishtha was the priest, and he said that, there is this incident is going on, let us go and see. You are such a strong, probably will be able to string that bow. So Rama actually did that, and afterwards Sita was given into marriage to Rama, and Janaka has other daughters also. They were also married to other 3 brothers. In that way, the whole family became came to the family of Dasharatha. So at this time, we see that Sita was already married, and they had spent about 12 years in married life. And when Rama decided to go to the forest, Sita said that I shall also go with you, because I am your wife and I have to take care of you. And Rama tried to dissuade, other relatives also tried to dissuade, but she was very adamant. Ultimately, it was decided that both of them will go. And also Rama's brother Lakshmana said that I also need to go with my elder brother, because I love him very much and I need to. And in the forest there are many dangerous things and I need to be his protector. That means I need to take care of him. So in that way, all three went to the forest. And in the forest, we see that Rama was a very devoted person, that means religious person. So in those days in the forest, there are many retreats where the sages used to spend their life in studies, teaching, and such other activities, spiritual activities. And time to time, there are some demonical persons or demons, literally demons. They are called demons actually. They used to come and pester them because they did not like people doing these spiritual practices, wasting their time, doing nothing. So in that way, they used to come and disturb them. So they used to live there. So Rama thought that, well, I have to go to the forest. So she left the kingdom and went into the different retreats of different sages inside a number of forests. So in that way, he came to a forest called Chitrakoot. And there actually we see that he was living a beautiful hut was made, and he said that now we have traveled many places in the forest and have met many sages, we have learned many things, now we shall settle here. So one day it so happened that when they were there, Rama went for hunting, because in the forest they will have to collect food. So he went for hunting. Sita was there, Lakshmana was there, and at that time one very beautiful golden color deer came into that retreat where they were near the cottage, and Sita was very much enchanted by seeing that deer. Rama, of course, did not go into the forest at that time. He was there. So Sita said to Rama that, well, will you please get me that deer? I would like to keep it as my pet. That means I love it. So Rama said that, well, what is the use of taking a forest animal? But Sita insisted, and Rama ultimately agreed. And then he went to catch that deer. And that deer actually fled. That means it ran into the deep forest, and Rama also pursued that deer. And in the meantime, actually, there is a sound. Lakshmana, please save me, I am in danger. In that way, some sound started coming from a distant place, Rama's voice. So Lakshmana thought that, well, Rama must be in great danger, I have to go. But Rama had asked Lakshmana not to leave that place till he returns. He had some premonition that some danger might come to Sita. To protect her, he asked Lakshmana to stay there till his return. Now, by hearing that voice of Rama, that he is in danger, Sita was also very much disturbed. She asked Lakshmana, go and save your brother. Lakshmana said, no, my brother has told me that you should stay here till I return. I cannot really leave you. There might be some danger. Then actually Sita scolded Lakshmana and said that, well, you must have some other, what is called, bad intention. That is why you are not leaving me. Then after Lakshmana was agitated, he left Sita and went to find out Rama. And ultimately he found Rama, nothing had happened, and they came back and they saw that Sita has been taken away. That means she was not in the cottage. She was taken away by one Rakshasa, that means one demon named Ravana. He was a very well-known demon who actually lived in the southern part of India in Lanka, which is Sri Lanka now, and previously it was named Ceylon during the British time. So he had his kingdom, and he was a Brahmin by caste. That means in those days, Brahmins usually did not become king, but he was very powerful and also very rich, and at the same time he was also a religious person. That means he had many boons from his chosen idol, Lord Shiva. She was a worshipper of Lord Shiva. So he was very proud. So naturally he thought that whatever I wish I can do. So when he saw Sita, he was enchanted by her beauty, and then he thought that, well, she is with this poor king who is in the forest, he has lost his kingdom, so definitely she will love to live with me. In that way, he actually asked her to come. But Sita was very much devoted to her husband, Rama. She actually declined, and ultimately she was taken forcefully by Ravana, and he was taken to his kingdom, Lanka. And when they returned, Rama and Lakshmana, they found that their Sita was missing, so they started searching here and there, and ultimately came to know from some, not exactly sages, but some people or some animals. That means in those days, animals were also very helpful. So he came to know that Sita has been abducted by Ravana. And now, being a king and also endangered wife, she needed to recover. That means it is the duty of the husband to get back the wife from who has been abducted. So ultimately, we see that Rama organized with the help of different animals and others and attacked Lanka, and ultimately Sita was recovered. Recovered means Ravana was killed in the war and Sita was back to Rama. From this point we see that the life of Sita became very miserable. Miserable means because she lived with Ravana at Ravana's place. Though she did not live in the palace, that means Ravana could not really persuade her to marry him. So naturally she was put in a prison, not exactly prison, it was a garden house called Ashok. That means full of a tree which is known as Ashoka. But she was surrounded by sentries, that means she could not really move out, and it didn't happen in there. She could not do that. So when she was recovered, Rama told that, well, you have lived with this stranger man for a long time, you need to give a test that you are what is called, you are pure. That means during this time actually you remain pure. Sita said that, why you doubt me? There is not a reason for doubt. I always love you, I always thought about you. But Rama said, no, I want a test. Test was like this, that in those days probably it was common that they used to lit a fire, that means a fire on the ground. And the person who was supposed to be a sinner, if that person walked over the fire, then that person will be burned. And if the person was really truthful, free from sin, that person will become what is called, come out of the fire without any injury. So Sita ultimately agreed, and Lakshmana, his brother, actually arranged this fire ceremony. And then actually she walked over it and she came out successful. That means there was not a single spot of what is called injury on her body. And Rama was satisfied. That means she actually accepted, and it was a glorified thing. So they all returned to Ayodhya. By that time, actually, this 13 years forest, living in the forest was over. So in Ayodhya there was a lot of what is called jubilation. The whole city was decorated, lights were lit, and he was coronated. And in that way he became a king and started ruling the kingdom. But time to time amongst the subjects, that means the people, ordinary people, there was always a what is called whisper amongst them that, well, Sita lived with Ravana for such a long, for 1 year, so that she is pure. That means they started thinking of bad of her. Then Rama actually heard that, because kings had their what is called their secret people, what is happening in the kingdom. So they brought the news that, well, your subjects are really doubting about the purity of Sita. It is better that you have another queen, so they will be happy. And Rama was very much into the service of his subjects. That means he loved them, not only loved them, he actually always tried to make them happy in whatever way they can become happy. He did not really budge from that. So his administration, he administered the kingdom in such a way that everybody was very happy, joyous. In fact, there is a saying that Ram Rajya, that means you cannot really imagine a beautiful kingdom or beautiful place to live like Rama's place. That means it was an ideal place to live. So all the people, residents were very happy, citizens were very happy. But he thought that, well, if I have to make them happy, so they have this, they want that I should not have a queen who is really doubtful, whose character is really, they are doubting. So by that time Sita actually became pregnant, and it was about a year after his return from the forest. So he told Lakshmana that, well, take my wife Sita. Sita actually wanted as a change to go to a retreat place, because all along by living in the forest, and also because she was born in a, probably her birth was also maybe momentous, that means she was born in a field, so she always loved nature. So she agreed, that means she said that, well, I want to go to a forest and live there for some time to take a rest. And that was an opportunity for Rama also. So he asked Lakshmana that you please take Sita to the cottage of Valmiki. Valmiki was, by that time, was a very famous sage who lived on the bank of the river Tamusa. Ajodhya was on the bank of the river Saraju. They are all the rivulets coming down from the Himalayas, and they all join into the river Ganga. So, and also Rama advised Lakshmana that, well, you are taking her there, but live there. That means you just leave her in the cottage of Valmiki, and tell him that I have sent so that she can be taken care of by him rest of her life. And Lakshmana was very much shocked, and she actually argued with Rama how actually he can really do that, be a just king, that means as a reputed king. But the Rama said that no, I always abide and try to make my subjects happy, so you do what I say. Ultimately, the king's order, elder brother's order, Lakshmana took her to the cottage of Valmiki and told Valmiki this is the situation. Valmiki was very happy and said that don't worry, I shall take her as my own daughter, and she was pregnant. So she said that when the sons are born, I shall take care of them and also teach them. That means I shall make them fit for becoming the rulers of the kingdom. That commitment was given to Lakshmana. Lakshmana, what is called, he was not, after leaving Sita, she was not very happy, but by this commitment she was a little bit assured that things will be okay. So he came back and told Rama what had happened, that means what he has said and what Valmiki has said. Then Rama started ruling the kingdom, and in that way we see that for about 12 years he ruled the kingdom, and there was a time when the great king actually performed one called Rajasuya Yogna. Rajasuya Yogna means to declare oneself a titular king, one has to perform a special type of ceremony, and which requires a lot of preparations, and also it is and all the kings around, they are invited, and those who accepted the invitation, they actually become a sort of subject, not exactly subject, but they commit that they will obey Rama. So more or less they become little bit inferior to the king who actually performed this. So in that way one becomes what may be said an emperor, that means a great ruler. So that ceremony was being performed, and that ceremony required that the wife, that means the queen, also be present during the religious ceremony. So because of the absence of Sita, and some people said that you bring back Sita so that she can also take part. But Rama did not agree, and also the priest said that it is not really. Once you have really left your wife, you should not bring her back. So what to do? So they advise that you make one statue of Sita with gold, that means golden Sita you make, and she can take part, or that statue will be representative of Sita, and in that way you perform this ceremony. And as a part of the ceremony, that ceremony went on, as a part of the ceremony, there were some entertainment program also. Entertainment program means in the evening they had some drama, and in that drama they invited Valmiki, and by that time Valmiki had composed some poems about the life of Rama. He was a very good poet. He became a very good poet in this way. There is a story that Valmiki was in the early age, he was not only thief, but what is called a murderer. That means he used to kill people and he used to rob them, and in that way he used to sustain his family. But ultimately, at the advice of one sage Narada, that changed his life, and he started doing spiritual practices, and ultimately he became a poet. Poet in a sense, that means before Valmiki, Swami Vivekananda has said, there is no Sanskrit literature as such. All the literature that were present at that time were religious literature. That means they were mantras and such other things. But Valmiki became the first literary person of Sanskrit. And it so happened that one day he was going for a bath in the river, and at that time he saw that two birds were making love on the tree. And from nowhere one arrow came, and one of the birds was really killed, and that bird fell on just in front of him. And the other bird, who was the companion, that bird came and started crying in front of the dead bird. And Valmiki was very much enraged. And out of that rage, actually, he uttered some what is called Sanskrit words. And that became the first composition of Sanskrit. So he became a poet in that way. Later on, we see that he composed Life of Rama in the poetic form, and that is actually Ramayana that we read. So he was invited, and he actually prepared one drama based on this poem of Rama, this Ramayana. And by that time, the two sons which were born to Sita, who was left by Lakshmana there, they also have become really young. So they are about 12 years old. That means this happened after 12 years of after Sita's banishment. So he brought them, and they started singing the songs about Rama's life. And Rama was sitting in the audience in his regal attire, and also the other people of his subjects and other ministers and others were also enjoying that drama. And at that time, by seeing these two boys, their name was Lava and Kusha. So the memory of Sita came in the mind of Rama. So he uttered Sita, Sita. That means as if he wanted to see Sita also in this drama. Valmiki assured that, well, yes, sir, I shall bring Sita in front of you. Then Sita was brought on the stage. And then when she came on the stage, the audience, they started shouting, Sita, we want taste, we want taste. That means they remembered that Sita had lived with Ravana, and those she had given the taste in front of Rama, that she was chased during her stay with Ravana. But again, they started shouting. And not only that, she was banished because of that. For that reason, they started chanting. taste. And it was too much for her to bear that type of insult in front of the public people. And then she actually prayed to Mother Earth. It is said that she was the daughter of Mother Earth. The reason is that she was left on the ground, that means on the earth, when his father found him just like a newborn baby. So she considered Mother Earth to be her mother. So she shouted, Mother Earth, this is too much for me. You please take me back to you. And at that time, it is what is called miracle of the nature, that in front of her, the land, that means the land actually divided, just like a sinkhole automatically came. And she actually jumped into that. And in the deep sinkhole, actually, she perished. That means and the sinkhole actually again, what is called, closed. So in that way, she left her body. So everybody has flabbergasted. Rama was beyond his wits. That means she could not really figure out what has happened. And also the subjects, all those things, started crying what they have done. So in that way, Sita went back, or she went back to her mother, we can say. So after that, after Sita's demise, Rama was very much sorrowful, and ultimately he thought that, well, my time also has come. He was an incarnation of God. So it is said that emissaries from the heaven came and told her that it is the time for you to come back to heaven. So whatever it may be, Rama decided to leave the kingdom. So he made arrangements for his what is called Lobo and Kusho, and his brothers were also his brothers or brothers' sons were also there. They were given the areas to rule. So in that way, he made all arrangements for the administration of his kingdom. Then he left to take a bath in the river Sarayu. And then it is said that after he took a bath, he did not come back. That means he was taken away by the water of the river. So he also disappeared. So that is the end of this Ramayana. It is a tragic poetry, and it is very lengthy also. And it has got the beauty that it is full of description of beautiful nature and beautiful dialogue between the sages of contemporary sages and Rama, spiritual discourses. And not only that, it has got different characters. So different types of people or nature in human beings that we see, all those things are really very beautifully illustrated. Ravana, how a cruel person can behave, and how a truthful and moral person can behave like Rama, and how a brother like Lakshmana who showed all the brotherly love to his elder brother Rama. And what to say about Sita? Sita actually is considered to be one of the 5 most remembered women of Hinduism. There is a verse, I just wrote it down. Ahalla Draupadi Sita Tara Mandodari Tatha Panchakanna Smarat Nityam Mahapataka Nashini. That means every morning, if you remember these 5 pious ladies of Hinduism, Ahalla, she was a wife of a sage. Then Draupadi, as you know, wife of the Pandavas. Sita, wife of Rama. Tara was wife of Bali. That means she was Hanuman's brother. And then not Hanuman's brother, but he was a king of the Vanaras. And Mandodari, she was the queen of Ravana. So these 5 are very illustrious, iconic as it is called. Iconic ladies, if you remember them, actually your whole day will pass in what is called good way. That means it will be very auspicious day. 5 virtuous women, as they are called. So Sita is very much idealized, or it is considered to be an idol for women of India. And another way, very recently I heard that there is a taboo also, that people do not give the name of their daughters as Sita. Of course, I have heard some women have the name Sita, but generally they try to avoid to give the name of Sita because her life was full of sorrow. Though she was a very illustrious, religious and spiritual and idealistic woman, but because of that situation, that is the situation of her lives, they do not want to name their daughters as Sita. It is just a taboo, I am saying. That is not that there is no name of Sita amongst the women. Yeah, they are there, but another aspect of this, Sita's life is this. Now Sita silently see that very little is we see in that book, or there are very little occasion of her expression when in this book, in the Ramayana, that means in her life. But there are certain occasions where actually you see that she expressed extreme, what is called principles that she followed, and not only followed, but they reminded also when occasions came. Reminded to Rama also when occasions came. I would like to give a few illustrations about that. So the illustration is that, first is that once, as we know that Rama went to the forest, and when he went to the forest, the sages said that, well, we are always pestered by these demonical, what is called, entities. You please save us. Rama was assured and said that, well, definitely I shall, whenever there is a necessity, you just call me and I shall come and I shall take care of them. That means I shall fight with them or kill them. That will be mine. That will be my privilege. That means that I shall very gladly do that. And in that way, kings used to be really, time to time, they are protectors of this city. That means one of the duty of the kings at that time used to protect these people, innocent people. That means they are religious people. That means they cannot really fight, or that is, or they protect themselves from these ill persons. So naturally they had to take the help of people. Just like we have to take the help of the police when actually we cannot really save ourselves. Some danger is there. So in that way, state as it is called, so it was the duty of the king. So Rama being a king or prince, so he agreed that yes, I shall do that. At that time, Sita actually said a very beautiful verse that we see to remind Rama. So he said that Kadarjo Karusha Buddhir Jayate Shastra Sevana Punarmatta to Ajodhayam Shatta Dharmam Charishasi. The meaning of this that you have come, he told Rama that you have come to this forest to living your, what is called, responsibilities of a king, this kingdom. That means you are not really performing your administrative duties or kingly duties. King's duty we understand to protect or to fight with the others, so naturally he needs to use weapons and all those things. But when Sita heard that Rama is committing that he will kill what is called these demons and others, then he reminded that you have come here to do spiritual practice. That means you have left your kingly duties. Now it is not really appropriate for you to use weapons. That means you should not use weapon during this time. So the meaning of this two lines is, in the company of weapons, a man's mind becomes polluted and cruel. And after returning to Ayodhya, you please follow the duties of a Kshatriya, that means of a king. It is a very wise utterance of Sita. If you have a weapon, naturally you will feel how to use it or how to protect it or how to keep it. So mind will be in association with the, what is called this weapon. That means with the association of the purpose of weapon, things related to weapon, and that will pollute your mind. That means you will become cruel. So Sita actually gave an example also. In ancient times there was a sage, and he was doing intense spiritual practice. So the king of the devas, that and Indra, was very much perturbed. He thought that I have to do something, so that actually the point is this, that sometimes people by doing spiritual practices used to fight with the not only demons, they used to what is called dethrone the king of devas also, that means gods. So he was allowed. So he came in the guise of a hunter, Vyadha, to this sage's place. And he actually gave a kharga. Kharga means a sword, a beautiful sword, and he presented that sage with that weapon. And said, the Vyadha said that, well, sir, please take it, keep it for me. When there is a necessity, I shall take it back. So that was the condition. But the purpose was that to divert the mind of that sage, the presentation was made. So when the sage got that, what is called weapon, he was enamored by that. That means he started cleaning it, polishing it, and using it here and there. And always his mind was on that weapon. So in that way his mind was polluted and became cruel. That means he started trying to use that weapon for here and there. So he reminded that if you have a weapon, your mind will become polluted and cruel. So at that time Rama was really left the Kshatriya dharma, that means the duties of a king, who for the sake of protection or other things he needed to use weapon. But now you should not do that, because you have come here to spend 13 years in doing tapasya and spiritual practice and a simple life. So she reminded Rama at that time. And there are many such occasions that we see that she, especially there is some dialogue that we find that she had with Ravana. Ravana, as we know, she was abducted, and Ravana tried to entice her to marry Sita, but Sita always stood on her stage. That means sometimes she used to scold with very what is called in a harsh language also. There is one translation. Ravana tries to win over Sita in Lanka by claiming that he loves her. However, Sita mocks Ravana by calling him a duck meandering on the shore, while referring to herself as a graceful swan who will not be swayed by a crass duck. At Lanka, during her dialogues with Ravana, she is portrayed to be a fearless woman who can fight for her moral values and devotion to her husband, and the doubts of her being a submissive and weak woman is absolutely erased. That means by her tongue, actually, she protected her from this fearful demon, Ravana, we see. There are such occasions in her life that we see that she not only protected her, but protected her value. Value means two values, that she was a woman and also she was a married woman. So naturally she was devoted to her husband. These two principles actually, throughout her life, she actually protected, that we see. Now Swami Vivekananda, gave a dedicated lecture on Ramayana, that means story of Rama in Pasadena. When he came to this country the second time in 1900, he came to Southern California, then to Northern California also. In Southern California, at the time there was a Shakespeare's Club. There he gave a few lectures, and one was Mahabharata and that was Ramayana. So in that lecture, at the end, he had said that you will not find any character like her. So he said, Rama and Sita are the ideals of Indian nation. All children, especially girls, worship Sita. The height of woman's ambition is to be like Sita, the pure, the devoted, the all-suffering. When you study these characters, you can at once find out how different is the ideal in India from that of the West. For the rest, Sita stands as the ideal of suffering. The West says, do show your power by doing. India says, show your power by suffering. This is the difference between the two ideals of two countries. So ultimately, he says that, we should live by our own ideals. We should not really, what is called, borrow others' ideal, and that will not be appropriate. So in that way, he has said. And ultimately, in another place, Swami Vivekananda said it, when he was in India, he gave a talk on the sages of India. There also he has said. And that is also very important and also very inspiring. I would like to share that also with you. Let me find it out. Yes, this is the where is that? Okay. Yes, I found it. Swami Vivekananda, Sages of India, you will find this lecture in Colombo to Almora. He says, you may exhaust the literature of the world that is past. That is a great tribute to Sita, and it is worth remembering why, as I told you at the beginning, Sita is one of the 5 great ladies, iconic ladies. It has been said, if you remember every morning, after your, what is called, when you get up from the bed, the whole day will pass in full of auspicious things. You may exhaust the literature of the world that is past, and I may assure you that you will have to exhaust the literature of the world of the future before finding another Sita. Sita is unique. That character was depicted once and for all. There may have been several Ramas perhaps, but never more than one Sita. She is the very type of the true Indian woman. For all the Indian ideals of a perfected woman have grown out of that one life of Sita. And here she stands these thousands of years, commanding the worship of every man, woman, and child throughout the length and breadth of the land of Aryavarta. Aryavarta means India in Sanskrit. There she will always be the glorious Sita, purer than purity itself, all patience and all suffering. She who suffered that life of suffering without a murmur, she the ever chaste and ever pure wife, she the ideal of the people, the ideal of the gods, the great Sita, our national god, she must always remain. And every one of us knows her too well to require much delineation. Our mythology may vanish, even our Vedas may depart, and our Sanskrit language and our Sanskrit language may vanish forever. But so long as there will be 5 Hindus living here, there will be the story of Sita present. Mark my words, Sita has gone into the very vitals of her race. She is there in the blood of every Hindu woman and man. We are all children of Sita. Any attempt to modernize our women, if it tries to take our women away from that ideal of Sita, is immediately a failure, as we see every day. The women of India must grow and develop the footprints of Sita, and that is the only way. So this was addressed in India. So Swami Vivekananda has paid this tribute. So you can imagine that how ideal was the life of Sita and how actually through suffering she had won the heart of every man or woman of India. And those who read her life definitely, other than in India also, she is very much adored. Next Sunday on April 10th, we shall celebrate Rama's birthday. It is called Ramo Navami. It is the ninth day of the new moon. So that will be celebrated at 10:30 a.m. with worship and chanting and songs and ritual rituals, and then it will end with prasadam, that means refreshments. Then we shall continue our study of Raja Yoga on Wednesday, and also Ishwadhananda will continue her class on Narada Bhakti Sutra on Friday, and on next Saturday there will be no discourse on Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, that is on April 9th. Om Madhuvataritāyate Madhuksharanti Sindhavaha Madhi Irna Santoshadhihi Madhunakta Mutosasi Madhumat Parthivagam Rajaha Madhudaurastuna Pita Madhumana Vanaspatihi Madhumakangastu Suryaha Madhirgavo Bhavantunaha Om Madhu Madhu Madhu. Sweet by the winds and the oceans give forth blessedness. May the earths and plants bring us health and happiness. Sweet unto us by the nights and dawns. May every particle of Mother Earth be charged with blessings. May the heavens shower us with benediction. Sweet unto us by the noble forest trees. Sweet unto us with the shining sun. Sweet unto us with the all living creation. Om, sweetness